Welcome to the Enlightened Misfits podcast, the space for entrepreneurs on a quest for unwavering certainty and purpose. I'm your host, Lauren, and each episode is a compass guiding you through authentic conversations, unraveling the mysteries of your human design chart, and offering tools from the remarkable guest. Join me as we embark on a journey to manifest greatness and create a life aligned with our deepest purpose. This is the space where misfits find their enlightenment. Welcome to the Enlightened Misfits podcast. Welcome back to the Enlightened Misfits podcast. You have your host, Lauren, and in today's episode, we have an amazing guest here. And you guys, let me just tell you, our conversation before we just got on was amazing. So this is Anna. She is a speaker, filmmaker, actress, and transformational coach. And oh my gosh, let me tell you, I'm going to let her speak for this, but Anna, welcome. Can you please tell us a little bit? Yeah, so go ahead and tell us a little bit about, for one, I have a lot of questions to ask you, I feel like, but tell our listeners how this came about, how you became a filmmaker, an actress, and now a transformational coach.
So I guess it all started when I had babies. Babies changed my life. So I was just kind of like an intellectual human woman, and then I gave birth. And I had something happen to me during my second birth, which is that I died during that birth, and then I was brought back to life. And when I was brought back to life, I woke up and I held my baby in my arms, and I was like, if not now, then never, by which I meant I had to get up on stage. You know, most people are like, oh, thank God I'm alive. I was like, oh, now it's time to get up on stage. And so that's exactly what I did. Within, a few months after my son's birth, and I'm still breastfeeding, I decided to write some funny short pieces about motherhood and how extraordinarily difficult it was to be a mother who has intellectual ambitions, who wants to have both a career and take care of the kids, and wants to be considered to be a perfect mom. And so the first little piece I wrote was called Conversations with My Breasts. And the second one I wrote was called Sex in Mommyville. And I called up a little cafe in New York City, and I said, hi, I was wondering if I could have 10 minutes on your stage. And the guy said, with titles like that, you could have your own solo show. And essentially overnight, from breastfeeding to the stage, like my life was honestly reborn. And I got up on that stage, and I hadn't really performed, and I hadn't really done anything like this before. And it was amazing. I packed the house, and all the women were laughing. And the next thing that happened is the theater picked up the show, and that show became Sex in Mommyville. And then from that moment on, I entered the theatrical space of New York, which was the best place to be at. And so I had an off-Broadway run, and I had to learn everything literally by fire. Not like, I'm going to take a class and figure this out and like do slow mo, but because I was already a mom, and because I was already behind, so to speak, in the acting world, I had to really learn fast. And it's honestly the best way to learn. But I also had shockingly amazing titles, which got attention and got articles and got people to come.
Right. I love that. So when you I want to talk a little bit about the conversation when we had right before. I was like, hold on, let's start recording because this is really good. So the coaching space. So when you say, tell me a little bit about being a transformational coach, or what is your vision on when you say that you're a transformational coach? What is that vision that you have for yourself and the world?
Yeah, so I want to lead up to it for a second just to give people a sense of what I do. So I have a film. So, fast track from Sex in Mommyville to I enter the film space, and I start creating films and web series that reverse gender roles. And at first I do it out of the frustration of being a woman in our society, just because, you know, I'm sitting there and I'm watching commercials that are telling women to be younger, to be thinner, to be, you know, better at this and that. And we're just bombarded with things like that. And so the first thing that I do is I create a web series called Happy Hour Feminism, where women sit on top of a bar and men come in with problems like skin problems or fat problems or like career problems. And the women advise them, and the women are just CEOs and billionaires and whatever. And from there, I create my movie, which is now currently playing in a limited release in New York City. And it's called Galaxy 360, A Woman's Playground. And in it, women rule the world, men dream of getting married, and it takes place during a male beauty pageant in the year 2195. And I create this, you know, sci-fi, totally insane universe. And it's been an incredible journey, because women come in and they watch men, you know, worry about their bodies and their nipples and their looks and everything like that. And everyone laughs, but at the same time, the women are like, oh my God, we're spending all our lives dealing with these ridiculous issues. And when it's coming out of the men's mouths, it's so much more ridiculous than when it's coming out of our mouths, right? So like even the discussion of like, should I have gray hair when I'm older, or should I not? Should I color it? It's like so absurd, because imagine guys worrying about that, right? Or like I have a ridiculous commercial called the duck fat injections, where they take fat out of a duck's butt and they inject it into the men's faces, and then the men suddenly look young. But if you and it looks ridiculous and everyone is laughing, but if we consider all the stuff that women put into their faces to look young, you know, and this is a no judgment zone. I never ever judge women, but I always say the reason that this happens is because we are not essentially, you know, in a position of power. And because we're not in a position of power, we're doing everything we can to get approval, and we're doing everything we can to, you know, compete in our world and our society to be both beautiful and talented and wonderful mothers and be super accomplished. And we're doing everything that we can. And we're essentially speaking in authentic languages. And this is where sort of my transformational coaching comes in. And these, you know, I've been teaching workshops to women. Actually, men have joined them too, but basically the workshops are about confidence. And, you know, people come to me and they say, okay, how are you so confident? You know, how can you teach me how to be more confident? I want to be more confident on stage. I want to do what you're doing. And so I started kind of exploring the space. And it's not just about, you know, the individual and teaching the individual how to become more confident. It's about creating an entire movement of humans who are more authentic. It's confidence that is authentic, rather than a superficial set of tools that we take on and that we utilize. And then, you know, when you're no longer on that stage, those tools are no longer being used, and you're back down, and you've fallen back down into your depression, or you're falling back down into your, you know, insecurities or your low self-esteem. And what I want to do is I want to create the kind of confidence that is internal, that is just emanating from within you. You don't have to work that hard to impart it when you're on stage, because it's already brewing and boiling within you. And the only way to do it is to take us to a world where we rule. And this is really like the film became the change within my own self. And then that change inspired me to create Ontario World, which is an entire galactic matriarchy with 11 planets with different ecosystems, all of which I wrote in the last, like, I don't know, 8 months. And I've created animations for it. But the idea behind it is I wanted to take women to a galactic matriarchy where everywhere on every planet, women are just born into power. And I wanted to take them on that imaginative journey. And I like to say that on Ontario World, confidence is not a skill set, it's your birthright. So when you're born into confidence, you experience a different self. And what I want people to do is, even though you're not feeling it in this existence that we're in, if you travel there for 10 minutes, 15 minutes a day, 20 minutes a day, and you come back, you will be a different person, because you will have lived there imaginatively.
I'm like, this whole conversation is like blowing my mind. I'm like, oh my goodness. So hopefully the listeners that are listening, they're gonna be like, what? I gotta go. First, we have to go run because I know I need to do this. Is that the film that you had you said it's released or it's going to be released?
Well, it's not streaming yet, but it is playing in a limited release in New York City. Well, it just played on Thursday at the Angelica Film Center in New York.
Okay.
But it's also going to keep, we're going to keep screening it in theaters. I'm already speaking to different people like in Washington, LA, Miami to screen it in different theaters first. And
Okay.
and then get it onto a streamer. But if people want to keep up with the movie, and it's pretty funny, so like get in.
Well, I know. I'm like, I need to go watch this. I need to go watch this myself.
That's so funny.
Yeah. So I was gonna say, well, I'll make sure in the description box that we have all of your links and how to keep in contact with you so people can follow you. Cause I know a lot of people are gonna be like, what is this movie or where can I find this? I need to watch this because I know I do.
Awesome. Well, that's what I want to hear. And I've had honestly an amazing response from people, like an amazing response to the movie. So we screened in Toronto at the Toronto Film Festival. And then, that was an amazing experience because we sold out in like 24 hours there. And then 2 days later, I said, okay, dress code required. All the women have to show up in like sparkly, futuristic clothing. And it was, everybody did. And in New York, we had the same thing. Everybody came dressed to that. I was like, no, it's because I just want, women love to dress up. I want to tap into everything us. I don't want to leave anything out. And so, and men follow. Men are like, oh, I need to wear silver, because it's future.
Yeah. And it's amazing that you have men that that are watching this too, because, those men that obviously don't want change or, don't want to believe that they are that man, then that's like, okay, well, because that's because you're that man, that she's talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I won't lie, there is some resistance from men. I will I will sometimes see like the women going like this, literally like this throughout the whole movie, right? Like I'll watch the audience from the sidelines with like a little like peeping at their faces or whatever. Watch it so many times. And then you'll see the men going like just like
they're like their egos are like, wow. Oh my goodness.
Like what's
like triggered the whole time. Yeah.
Well,
my boyfriend, he'll watch it
exactly.
And he'll crack up.
And it's interesting. I've also caused some fights within couples, like some that's always fun. But the other thing that's interesting is that the men who are really cool and are really comfortable in their skin
or self-aware,
and self-aware will really laugh and come out of that saying, hey, you affected me. And sometimes people will be like, that movie, and the movie has had actual tangible impact. Like the most brilliant moment was a woman that I've known like my whole life. We went to grad school together. She brought her daughter to the screening, and the daughter is shy. And she told her mother that upon leaving my movie, she started to walk with a straighter back. She said, I literally straightened my back and felt like I had power when I walked out of that movie theater. And I said, well, you know what, Fishbeyn, you did your job right there. That was one moment that was completely worth the 5 years that I spent putting this together. So
I was going to ask you, I was just literally going to ask you that question. So what kind of feedback that you got from people? Because I know me personally, when I do something new or I, like with this podcast or, like on my other social media platforms, that I like constructive criticism and I want to know, like, cause I'm on my head too. So it's like, am I creating value? Is this something that people want? Is whatever my ideas that I think are so great, does everybody else think that they're great too? I feel like that is huge when it comes to, especially, working with, society or the public, being in the public eye like you are, you have to have that very confident, personality, because if not, society will tear you apart.
Yes. And I expect I always expect it, and
Yeah.
I know I'm doing something that shouldn't be controversial, but is, because the world
Yes.
isn't always ready for us. And
Right.
that it's not always ready. And and I'll say this with, all honesty here. It's a sexy movie. I take things, I'm not just talking about how we look. I'm not just talking about their fat. I've got female judges who call the sexual shots. And my movie has been, in some reviews and some first comebacks, has been compared to Barbie, and I always like to say we're Barbie after dark. We are the Barbie where, yes, we're the powerful women, but women in my movie want sex. And sex and sexuality and sex as in gender and female sexuality is such, and this is where I do become somewhat controversial. This is where it does become uncomfortable. This is where I am talking about things that people are not comfortable in outing, and I am confessional. And I give you the courage to be confessional. I give you, the woman or the man watching it, the bridge that you need to be able to talk to one another about a topic that really needs talking to. And so
Right.
one of the most powerful things that happened is my cast members, the men, I have the most amazing male actors, the most sympathetic men you could ever dream of, who had to be on camera, and where the camera, just like it does for women, goes right down to their packages, and and goes up and down across their bodies, you know what I mean? And they had to, and they're watching themselves on screen doing this, and they
They're probably like, oh, what did I sign up for?
right, exactly. They're like, oh my God, and they didn't even know that I'm going to take the camera and use it this way. Right. Because they're watching for the first time. They're watching at the premiere in New York on September 13th. They're like, oh my God, you can feel myself going, like, the actors are watching what the camera is doing now. And at the end, they said, this film transformed them, and it transformed the way that they are approaching women in their lives and their girlfriends and their mothers and their daughters. And it helped. And, one of the actors said, Anna is creating bridges for conversations between men and women, and we really need to be having these conversations. And he also said, I was always very uncomfortable talking about this. And, and by doing this, by having these conversations, and I've been having them almost after each screening. I've shown up to every one of my screenings, and we have these different, interesting conversations that come out of the movie, and that you realize that we're not really talking, right? Like, men and women are not talking to each other. They're talking at each other. And my greatest goal with creating this movie, and even Ontario World, which at first might seem like, oh, I'm telling men that women are now in power. No, I am telling you, let's switch positions in society and experience looking at the world from each other's eyes, so that we can finally have enough empathy to come together and actually build a bridge and a conversation and a level of communication and a level of understanding. So the whole idea behind it is that there's like an empathetic, wheel that's happening, where each gender is re-experiencing the world through the other person's eyes. Similarly, when we had power, I like to say, when me and all these women had power, it was not an easy undertaking.
Right.
I remember, like, I said to all the women, all right, guys, now, we're all going to grab the guys' asses and we're going to touch their bodies. And at first, in the first take, none of us could touch the guy. Like, we were just frozen. We're like, oh, wait, like, what are we supposed
Like,
to
what's happening?
Yeah, like, it was so uncomfortable because
Yeah.
it's not natural. But the other aspect of it is, when I did get to walk out on camera, on stage, as a powerful woman with feathers behind me, like a peacock, I experienced power, and I experienced being in charge. And something, amazing happened to me, in that I loved having power. I adored it. I thought to myself, wow, if I was a guy, would I ever want to give it up? That.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Like, I was like, oh, okay, so I get it. if I've always had power and I live in the space of power, it's not so easy. It's not so easy for them to just say, hey, take my job or share this podium with.
Right.
It like
Yeah.
requires all of us to take away our gendered identities and identify with one another as humans. It requires
I love that. Yeah.
right, a true soulful equality. It's
Right.
like, so we are souls coming together. Let's stop thinking of each other as I am gendered and therefore.
Right. Yeah. And I love that you said that, because that what comes to me is the whole masculine, the feminine energy. And it's like, people think of masculine energy as like male, like gender. And it's like, no, your soul doesn't consider itself a female or male. It considers itself having masculine and feminine energy, right? So it's like most of these women, like if you're an actual woman, have these roles that they have to be in the relationship, if we're talking about relationships, right? Like that masculine role, so you're doing everything. You're doing, you're trying to be the mom, you're trying to be the nurturer, you're trying to be, being that person that, if you're a single mom. And I feel like a lot of people in this, now that are, getting divorced and they're single moms, or they're just single, they're like, you showed me how to do it alone, so why do I need you to be here to take care of you too, right? So it's
Right.
like that power role that now women, I can see, even like my clients, I can see that they're not, they learned how to do that. And it's like, why would they ever want to give that up? Kind of like you're like the males, like having that power. And it's
Right,
like,
right.
I can understand why men need to have, be, I always believe that men have a role, like just like every single person have a role in the society. They have a role in a relationship. They have a role in their business. They have a role at work. They have a role with themselves. But if nobody teaches them how to be because men themselves, like gender being male, have feminine energy inside of them, but it's not
Exactly.
taught to them
Exactly.
unless it's taught in a wounded feminine, or they have a mother wound, or they have something like that their mom never taught them that. And that's not their mom's fault, but it's their fault. It's their job to learn. It's not their fault either. It's
Yes.
their job to learn that. So yeah, I definitely love that.
Exactly. And there's also this whole element about us women. When men learn about us women and the way that they identify with women or think about women is through the conversation of victimhood, right? So something that happens between men and women, and in particular in response to this movie, this movie becomes very raw. There's an ending at the end that is a little bit, it's not that comedic. And I talk about things that are painful and uncomfortable towards the end of the movie. And I like to say that because it brings up these conversations.
Right.
And the men have learned to apologize to us, right? They've learned, I mean, not necessarily really apologize. I mean, in the movie, they apologize to the women a lot, but I make them apologize, right? They're always saying sorry in the movie. And but the idea is that nice men, kind men, empathetic men
Yeah.
tend to apologize to oh, I'm so sorry that happened to you. I'm so sorry that guy was such an asshole. I'm so sorry. But the problem is that in these sort of exchanges, they don't learn about all the ways in which we are strong and we are powerful, and a way in which is because our power and our strength is viewed, perceived, and presented as threatening. And rather than treating the female body as a whole, we are treated kind of like, well, you're either like this aggressive feminist, or you're a sweet stay-at-home like mom, or a nice girl that I want to marry. Like, like you're split into like these two bifurcated identities, right? Either you're like,
Right.
And my theory, or part of my sort of transformational confidence coaching that I want to impart to women and men essentially, but from a different perspective, I'm just going to speak to the women first, is that I want to say that, and this is actually controversial, and I will say it anyways, but I think
Yep, you're safe to say it.
I'm going to say a couple of controversial things, because I truly believe that women need to find a way to transcend the pain and the position of feeling and being treated as victims, because I think it puts us into a position of a loss of power. So I'm not saying that we ignore trauma. Everyone, I've got some serious trauma and some serious, but I don't want to be identified with the trauma, and I don't want to be identified as victim. And even when I speak about things that have happened to me, the expressions on people's faces are often pity, or they're often like, just the face changes and they kind of feel like, and I want to say that pain, right? I want to re-examine that pain as a source of power. And I want to re-examine the process of processing as a way to gain power and inner strength, so that processing doesn't become a self-perpetuating drop into the abyss, right? Because often, because when the old me who used to process, the way that it would go is like, all right, let's process my pain. Let's talk about what I went through. Oh my God, that's so sad. That's so horrible. That's so unjust. So there, and you drop. So you drop and you drop and you drop. Your sadness expands. You cry more. There's a sense of injustice. And then you have two options there. One, totally drop into the abyss, become paralyzed, never do anything again, and give up on the world, because that's sometimes the processing leads into that direction. Or if you're stronger, right, let's avenge the asshole, right? Like, let's avenge the abuser. Let's avenge that, and let's do this to avenge them. So you've got like these two incredibly unproductive options. If you're avenging the abuser, you're spending your whole life dealing with the abuser. And my God, I will be the first person to say, thank God for the women that went, and identified their abusers and did everything they could to prosecute them. And, I am blown away by that strength and that mettle, because I am not one of those women. I chose to create art, and I chose to do something different. I chose to build, so sort of to take it and build from it.
Like turn it into motivation.
Exactly. And so what I want to help women do is process less, do more, and move on and forward, and utilize that energy of what's happened as though they were observers of their own world, that are observing and making a better world out of it. But the observational aspect of it allows you to separate yourself from the pain, from the emotional pain.
Right. I love that. I was going to say, I love that process, because I feel like what came up for me when you were saying that, like you said, it made you. So I believe, like, what my belief is all of us, like every single person that has ever went through like trauma. I feel like every single person has childhood trauma, even if somebody says, oh, I had a good childhood. But it's just like, then, those questions come up. And I think I had a conversation about this a couple of weeks ago on a different, with another guest on here. And she had said, I believe these are her words. She is a mental health therapist. And she said that we all have childhood trauma, because the reason why she knows this, and this to be true, would be because if you have confidence issues, or if you aren't confident, or you have low self-esteem, or, you're not speaking to other people, you don't have friends, you don't like to be public, that's all signs of trauma, right? So it's like, and trauma, I feel like in today's society, most people, especially our parents' generations, maybe not my generation, but our parents' generation, or the older generations, they don't think trauma is stuck emotion. And that's literally the definition of trauma, is just stuck emotion somewhere in your body that manifests to disease, to manifest to mental, you have mental health issues. This could be addiction. It could be whatever it is. It could be whatever. It could be cancer. It could be whatever. And I feel like here on this podcast, we have those conversations, and they're very controversial. They're very woo-woo. They're very like etheric. They're very like 5D, 6D, 7D, 8D. And it's just like, the people that run this country or run these different societies, they're aware of all of this. They just don't want you to know about it. Like they are very consciously aware of all of this. And I feel like now, not that I want to speak too much about that because I don't want to be blacklisted, but like, I do have to watch what I say sometimes, but I feel like having those conversations and it to be very controversial, it makes people have that awareness, because none of us are born with awareness. We have to
Right.
be curious, and, for somebody just to say something like that, or to have that, like you said, your process. I love that, because it actually, for me, without actually have, like the way that you said it, that's pretty much how it was for me when I first started, and why I was so curious. I was curious my whole life why things were the way they are, and nobody really told me why. So it's like I was that kid that asked, well, why is this way? Why is that way? And I just got told well, it's just that way because, and I'm like, no, it's not. There's a deeper reason. And it's like, I think anybody that knows me could say, Lauren, literally say everything has a deeper reason, because it does. Like, I feel like, because it does. Like, I don't know if
Yes. Yes.
you resonate with that, but I
100%.
know it does. And I personally want to figure that out.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
not just figure it out, but move it into
Yes.
transcendence and awakening,
Right.
and
Yeah.
get us to be much, much more awakened, because,
Right.
I spent, some time down into that, abyss, the abyss of, I'm in
Oh yeah.
trauma, I'm processing trauma, I'm going to live it. Oh, I'm going to relive it like this, and I'm
Yeah.
going to relive it, and what happens is you become, I mean, I very fortunately did not get paralyzed for too long, but I do remember that needing the need. So I wrote a novel while I was married, right. I was writing a novel up until the birth of my children, and right after the birth of my children. And that novel actually helped me to process some of my childhood trauma, because I was born in Russia, and I experienced a lot of trauma because I'm Jewish, and there was a lot of anti-Semitism. And so I have some incredibly, I mean, I'm not going to talk about it here, maybe another time, but some really traumatic events that happened to me as a child. 3 years old, somebody, tried to kill me and called me a dirty Jew. Like, I'm 3 years old. 3 years old, a man on a truck is driving into me and trying to kill me for being Jewish. And it's just stemming from my last name. So, and that's a memory that I kept, that came to life, especially after October 7th, like that memory just went like exploded in my head. Right. So, because it triggered, October 7th triggered a lot of these sort of anti-Semitic scars that Jewish people have. And you put them away, you store them in a little closet that says trauma. You're not going to interfere in my everyday life. But when something like that happens, it's like it's affecting you on a global scale, and your entire being is like, just altered. So, but that trauma, right, can, and there was a bunch of them up until we come to America, and, we flee Russia. But some of those traumatic events end up becoming the reason that I get myself into abusive relationships, as everyone, will point out. And so the problem is, you get into an abusive relationship, and suddenly you're like, okay, wait, why? I'm loved by my parents. I was a pretty good kid. I got pretty good grade. Why did I do this? Why did I do that? So then you go back and you're like, all right, I got to process that trauma. And then you start processing that trauma, and then it makes you lose faith in life, in yourself, in reality, in going on. It makes you lose faith in the world, because if the world is so unfair, why go on? Why should we go on? And the only thing I can say, and this, you spoke a little bit to that, you talked about disease. And I want to say this because this is important. It's actually part of my transformational coaching approach. It's also part of my healing mantra. And that is, every single emotion, right, can be like a fist in the gut. So if it's a fist in the gut and you fold, it can cause a disease, right? So like,
I love that. Yeah, I love that. I love the way that you are explaining that. Yeah.
Right. Because if I say to myself, yes, Anna, you've gone through trauma. Now, let's imagine that this is my trauma, and this is my memory from my childhood. And now I feel it fully, process it fully, weep under it, allow it to then formulate other thoughts, like the world is unjust, everything is unfair. And now watch, like my hand is now just completely being crushed into the ground. And what that does is that drops my immune system, makes me get ill, maybe makes me get pneumonia, maybe makes you, get something else. And now suddenly you're ill, and you're ill for a long time and you don't know why. And so it's a very, very close intersectional relationship between your emotions, your trauma emotions, and your health, right? It's like,
they're the only two things that you really have, right? Like, so you have your body, right? Or you have your mental health, or like emotions, whatever, but that's the only two things you have. So if you don't, like, I often see people, and it's like a huge, thing with after the pandemic and understanding, like, being healthier, that they wait until they're not healthy to get healthy, instead of being like, just being like having the awareness of, like, I'm not talking about eating, like, that different thing that can play a part, but it's like, if that, like your gut, I believe, like with supplementation, or your gut, like your second brain is your gut. So it's like, in your body, as much as you want to trick your body into not remembering that, your body remembers, and it will remind you every single day of those choices that you decided to make, because we all have free will here. So it's like, having, like, because I was that person, I feel like I can speak about that, because I'm like, well, I'm healthy, I'm just gonna eat however I want, I'm young, and then all of a sudden I have gut issues, I have, terrible mental health, I felt, like I had, I don't speak about this much, but like suicidal thoughts, all that stuff, very bad postpartum depression after my daughter, very traumatic relationships my entire life. Like you had very two loving parents, very supportive family. It's like, why was I going towards these people that all they wanted to do was, I allowed them to abuse me? Like, it's not like they were abusive.
Yeah, you and I, like, now you were really, like, honestly, like, connecting on such a.
Yeah. So it's like, I had to change that mindset when I was asked this question. And it was just a genuine question that I remember my mom asking me. And I love her dearly, and we healed that relationship. I'm just saying that because she'll listen to this podcast, and I don't want her to feel bad. But she had said to me, and her and my dad both said, why do you go after abusive people? Because they weren't aware of all the abuse I actually went through until I publicly spoke about it. And I never knew how to answer that question up until I published my own book a couple of years ago. When I spoke my story, I basically, knew I had a higher purpose here. When I came here, when I came here, like, knew I had all my gifts and all of my, abilities when I was like really young, 5, 6 years old. Like, I knew I was much different than everybody else. And not that I'm any different than anybody else, like, here, but I just knew that all of that, like, I picked my incarnation mission here. I picked to help the collective in some type of way. Like, when people would ask me when I was very young, they asked me what I wanted to be. I wanted to be an astronaut, one of them. And I also wanted to help change the world. Like, I wanted to change the world. Didn't even know how, but when people would ask me that, that's what I would tell them. So people are like, what's going on? Like, most kids want to be like, firefighters. They want to be, they want to be police officers. Not me. Lauren I wanted to change the world. So my mom, I think, kind of had that awareness that she protected me for so long, because she was like, she is different. There is something different about her, and that society norm. Like, I don't want her to be so different, all that stuff. So, and I was just one of those kids. That's why I named the podcast The Enlightened Misfits, because it's like, everybody normally that's on here or listens to this feels the exact same way in a different experience, because we all have different experiences, but it's all the same thing, right? Like, I feel like it's all, the root is all the same thing. So yeah, I definitely love that we're having this conversation.
No, it's like amazing. And, I think almost everything you spoke about, everything you spoke about, I connect with. I didn't actually experience postpartum depression, but I did experience a very high spike, like after I gave birth to my kids and I was performing and I would have these shows, right?
Yeah.
And I would have like the height of the show and everybody would be like, Anna, 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 Anna. And it was like amazing, amazing, amazing. And everybody's coming and people are reviewing you and you're in the news, right? And it's like, and you're like a mom and also you're a performer. And it was
Yeah.
so cool when I was doing Sex and Mommyville and I was so sexy, right? Like, and it was
Yeah.
so cool. And then the show would end and I was just, it was like a drop, right?
Right.
And it was this constant, like, show would be up, I'd be up, show would drop, it would drop. And I noticed, I started to pay attention to this, that you, Anna, are not at a level, right? I'm not in a balanced place. I am reacting to the situations around me, and my emotional moods would be reacting. But eventually, I started to see I had a complete awakening. I'm just going to say that, I had an incredible transformation. I started doing Kundalini yoga. I started meditating. I started treating my body differently. I started understanding how sometimes I thought that I was depressed, but it was really because I was in a room with people who were depressed and I was just kind of like absorbing some of their energies. And I started to understand energy and how energy can impact us. It can lift us, it can drop us. And there's a way in which we can, and I always say this, if people who ask me about how to be a public speaker, you can move an audience, you can communicate with an audience, you can take them in, or you can throw them out, you can embrace them, or you can keep them at a distance, right? You can do so many things to the audience. All you need to do is listen. All you need to do is read your room, right? But so important to read your room without that room affecting your soul to the point where everything in that room enters your soul. So like you have to know exactly what your soul is. This is why I, talk about like authentic confidence. It's not just confidence, right? It's like a confidence is not really confidence. Confidence is a form of protection. And, to speak to our title that we spoke to in the beginning, From Confidence to Freedom, it's really your freedom. It's really how to create the sort of confidence that will allow you to exist in the world without the world destroying you, no matter what the world is doing at that time. So whether it's your own personal relationship or it's politics or what's happening in the world, all of these things can impact you. If you're in an abusive relationship, but you're trying to have an incredible career and it's so difficult because you are in an abusive relationship, you need to be able to separate and understand. And again, read the room, read your partner. So even if you can't get out of that relationship, and I'm sure I'm speaking to people who are listening to your podcast, if you're stuck in a relationship, and I know a lot of women, when I was doing Sex and Mommyville and we would have candid talks, and women who lived in New York who would say, you know what, I would like to leave my husband, but I can't because of kids, or I can't because of financial reasons, or I can't. What do I do? How do I keep going? How do I keep my head about myself and my sanity and keep up the career and keep up with the kids and stay in a place which is very damaging to myself and my self-esteem? And this is where, the confidence really comes in, and it becomes like armor. It's like armor that you build from your gut out into the world around your body, and you take that armor with you, and you know that when that person is going to say something mean to you because they are actually trying to keep you from becoming your full self, or keep you from really excelling on that stage, if you're about to go on that stage, or you're about to pitch your meeting, or you're about to get that amazing promotion, you're trying to get that promotion, but you have a partner who is trying to make it more difficult for you. And I think that this goes both genders, right? This can be a man trying to succeed with a woman not letting him, or vice versa. But in my experience, it's mostly women who would tell me that story. But if you have something like that going on, the only way to be able to exist, survive, and thrive is to be aware. So first, understand it. That's just one person. Right? That's just one person, and he's expressing his opinion, and that opinion is negative. And you read it as that, and as soon as you read it at that, it loses its power. As soon as you observe it, and I like to do like several different, like, perspectives, because if you look at it from different perspectives, it really, really helps you. So one perspective is you lift up and you float above your soul, like you're a soul floating above your body, and you're watching how that body is interacting with the parents and with the husband and with the children. How are you interacting with everybody, and how's everybody interacting with you? Who's saying to you what they're saying, and what is it doing to you? I used to say to myself, okay, when my mom says X to me, how am I responding to that? And some of her opinions came like you were saying about your mom, we're connecting on that too, because my mom had some old-fashioned opinions that, were coming in from the way that her mom raised her, and that all of us women have been programmed to be. And I would say, you know what, Mom, that's not helpful to me. And she's changed, because, I keep communicating and saying, that's not helpful. But even the power and the strength to say to your mom, that's not helpful, took an awakening. Because
it's not easy.
It's not easy, because most of our lives, we are just absorbing the programming, and we are regurgitating the programming. And until we do that shift where we say to the world around us, hey, that's not helpful, or I'm not if you can't change them, if there's no hope for that, I often say, people always advise, okay, if you're with a narcissist, get rid of the narcissist. Well, you know what? In some women's situations, they can't. They're stuck and they're in it. And let's help them thrive. Let's help everyone, we meet them where they are, and we give them the tools to thrive.
Yeah, it's so, speaking about that, I feel like that. So it's like the moms or the mom groups or whatever on Facebook or whatever that say, oh, get rid of him. Like a genuine, mom or woman or whoever is coming into this group being vulnerable to saying, hey, this is my problem. And the moms that say, oh, just leave, or don't even ask any contacts, I'm just like, there's always like, and I'm just like, oh, God, that poor woman is just being vulnerable and asking for the tools. Sure, the easiest thing to do would be to leave. But if you've been in that situation, right, it's not easy. And when people ask you, like, why didn't you leave? I always say, I used to get very triggered by this, but now I say, you just would never understand. And that's okay. So let me help you understand. And would you like to know? And I will tell them literally my story. Obviously, from my ex-husband's perspective, it's going to be much different than my perspective, which is okay. But then at the end of the day, I know that I wouldn't have my daughter. I wouldn't be who I am today. I wouldn't have all those experiences to use as my power, like you say, to be able to help other women or empower other women, because they have the same exact experience. So it's like, I'm grateful for all of the experiences that I had because of that. And people, it's very, I feel like it's very, from what they tell me, it's very inspiring to watch somebody, yes, I had the support of my family and my parents, but at the same time, I didn't have a good relationship with my mom and my dad. I didn't, I had to heal that. I had to figure out, how can I love them and accept them of who they are right now, and then give that confidence and be like, have that boundary, because that's the hardest thing, is those boundaries, right? It's like having that.
Yes.
I love you. And I use the sandwich method with boundaries. A lot of people don't like the sandwich method, but I tell them, I love you and I appreciate you. Tell them my boundary. And then, you give them gratitude, because then that, immediately, if you state a boundary, immediately, if they're in reactive mode or they're in that victim mentality, and usually most of the time they are, they're going to immediately be like, well, poor me. Why is everything my fault? All this stuff. So it alleviates, I've noticed, when I place boundaries with different family members or, whoever I need to place boundaries with, when I state how much I appreciate and love them and all the good that they have done for me, but still say you're not allowed to do this, it's taken
Mhm.
so much differently. And I feel like you have to have awareness of that. I wasn't born with any of that. Like I actually had to learn that because, if I'm being honest, 4.5 years ago, I didn't know what a boundary was. I was never taught what a boundary is. And that was the biggest red flag because I thought people are just allowed to treat me that way, or this is just the way that it's supposed to be, being an empath. And, and it's like, like you said, absorbing, and coming back to like postpartum, like in Western medicine, that was my diagnosis. Just like when I was diagnosed with
Right.
7 or 8 years old with ADD, now it's ADHD. And I realized I don't really I don't even agree with any of that stuff because it's just like, it's the lack of awareness that my parents had of, I believe that ADHD is like in Western medicine, it's a diagnosis. I believe that if we just work with how people learn differently, then, and this is probably another controversial subject. I was diagnosed with that. And I feel like I understand that we need Western medicine for some things, but we don't need it to classify people in categories of depression, anxiety, ADHD, autism, all this stuff just to get these prescriptions, subscribed for these people so they can keep you in this container. And I feel like that is ultimately what that section of Western medicine is like, just to have that diagnosis, which I understand that these are real things, but if it's like, how about we just bring awareness to what's actually happening and actually give people tools. In a perfect world, that's exactly what would happen, but it's not going to be a perfect world. And hopefully that people can have those resources now to believe just because they were labeled this as a kid, they don't have to carry that label with them the rest of their life. Because I know, yeah, sure, I was diagnosed ADHD, but I just think differently than other people. And I just learn different than the other people. And I've learned that awareness through human design, but I feel like when you are classified as this and have to take a medication to act a certain way, you're just acting a certain way so you are accepted by society. And I don't align with that at all.
Right. I have so many thoughts on
Yeah.
so many. You said so many interesting things
Yeah.
that I want to like speak to and also break down because
Yeah.
I think, obviously you and I are aligned,
Yes.
completely and utterly.
Yeah.
But I want to speak to, let me just briefly hit up the ADHD and the stuff that you said. And let me just give my little 2 cents on it. Now,
Sure. Yeah.
because I was born in Russia and Russia did not accept depression as a real diagnosis. Russia was like the complete opposite, right? Like
Right.
you couldn't be anything. When we came to America, it was almost like, thank God that they're helping people. I have, what I was going to say is that I have friends who take antidepressants and those antidepressants save them. And, but I also come from a country where people were perpetually depressed and survived, like, because you're
Right.
taught, right? You're taught to survive. Now,
Right.
what I want to say on this, and obviously you and I, we do believe in the power of the mind and the power of Eastern medicine and the power of supplements and the power of all these things to kind of help us to transcend. The problem is, and I can safely, because I study like Qigong and Kundalini yoga and all these different art forms,
Yeah.
and I actually practice in real life 3 to 4 different art forms for my own body to be able to speak with the confidence that I currently speak with, and to be able to understand that that person's statement is just a statement. It's like a ball, right? It's a ball that's thrown at me, and I can catch
Right.
the ball midair and just throw it on the ground. I could throw it back at them if I'm in a mood, right?
Right.
Right. And I
Just put
have
it back to the earth.
yeah, but
On the
you could
ground.
put it back on earth, but you could also do something interesting. That person throws you a ball. Let's say it's a family member and you
Right.
want to be with it. Let's say it's a spouse, a partner, a boyfriend, a girlfriend, whoever, right? They're throwing you a ball and you know that ball is going to hurt. You can
Yeah.
grab that ball, catch that ball, stop them before they move on to the next sentence and say, "Hey, you threw me this nasty ass ball. And I'm just going to let that ball float between us. And I'm going to ask you, what do you mean by that? What did you mean by, what are you trying to do to me? What's behind that ball?" And it does magic. it's a magical tool right at our disposal, because you're not avenging them. You're not hurting them. You're not doing, it's exactly what you spoke to about boundaries, right? Yeah. Sometimes when they cross that boundary, it's like that ball, and they're throwing that ball across your boundary, across your personal space, and trying to penetrate in. And if you just catch that ball midair and stop it from entering your personal space, but then make them aware of it, then that boundary is immediately, you are reasserting your boundary first. You're teaching them something about you and what you want and who you are. And you're also helping them to interact in a much more productive way with you, right? Like, it's a really amazing, I love to think of like,
I love that. I'm gonna use that. I'm personally gonna use that. I love that. I'm like, I love getting new tools, and I love that, because I feel like for me that came up, I feel like I have so much love and compassion, and I always can see, and I truly believe, like, if it's a family member or if it's whoever I come across, I know their misery or their mean comments. It takes a level of awareness, like you said, to, but here's the thing, I'm also human, and I might be having a bad day, and that might come across of like, who do you think you are, or something like that. But it's like, I have the level of awareness that it's not about me, and I shouldn't be taking it personal. I should just ask them, hey, and I feel like a lot of, creators and motivational speakers, going back to, the public speaking, they speak about this because it's real. It takes so much more energy. And I've tried, I'm like, at first when people say that, I'm like, that doesn't work at all. And I was like, I'm going to try it myself. And I have tried it. And I'm telling you, it takes less of my personal energy to literally bring them, like you said, bring attention to, because here's the thing, a lot of people that are hurting and that are just, stuck in this victim programming aren't even aware of the energy that they're projecting. And then until somebody says something to them, and then most of the time, and if I do this with a family member or a friend, they're like, oh crap, I apologize, I didn't even realize, or maybe they won't, but most of the time they're not even aware that, because that's conditioning. That's all about, that's how they're conditioned to defend themselves, and like constantly have like those peacock feathers, like when you walk up to a peacock.
Oh, exactly.
It's like constant defense. And I feel like I was like that a lot with my mom, but it was because that's how I was conditioned in that relationship, that I felt like when she had awareness about, let's change different stuff. Even now, like, I see that those traits in myself that I have, I'm healing with my daughter. I mean, my daughter's young, she'll be 4, but I feel like I can see the conditioning that I've watched my grandmother, my mom, because I've watched my grandmother, the way that she parented my mom. And I watched that. And it's like, I can see that generational kind of like, I don't want that to happen in my generation with my daughter. So I need to be aware of that. And I feel like if you want change, you have to be that change. So I love that.
Exactly. And it's also like, I was just thinking as you were saying this, it's also about watching it all in slow-mo, right? It's like when that comment comes in, when you're more aware of things. And I think I get this a little bit from Qigong, because Qigong tends to be like very slow
motion. Yeah.
You're just
intentional,
going like intentional energies. And so when that comment comes in, I'm able to now suddenly watch it like, oh, that's a bullet headed my way, I'm going to catch it, and it's an interesting thing that happens, because I do think that words can be bullets. I do think that words can be painful. And I think that women are taught exactly what you said a couple of seconds ago. They're taught to just throw it down on earth and like let it go. And it's easier, just like what you said, it takes me less energy to like deal with it, right? Because we think of it as dealing with it, then it's much easier for me to just go on with my life. Yes, that's true, but only if your outer armor, the thing that I've been talking about, that incredible outer armor, is so thick and so strong that you truly are able to bounce it off and let it drop to the earth. But if that armor is not that strong, and if that bullet can penetrate through your armor, through your skin, and enter your soul and infect your body, and maybe even get your day down that day, because that happens. One sentence can get your day down.
Yes.
If that's true, the best tool, easiest tool is actually to catch it mid-flight and turn it around and have that person face it. Because as uncomfortable as that interaction is, you, by pushing back, by acting back, because you're basically, if you think of it like motion, action, reaction, right? If we think of it like, something coming
like
at
science.
you,
It's just
right?
science. Yeah.
It's science, right? Something coming at you, and now you're pushing it back by acting and doing so. You're actually taking a positive action towards a negative action, and you're preventing, and thereby preventing the negative action from actually impacting you. And it's a very interesting thing to do. It's the way I do healings, and I think about healing. See, I've now said it, but sometimes, I've sometimes healed. And sometimes I do healings and I talk about the fact that it's an impact that affects you. And if you could just think of it like in the style of martial arts, in the style of Qigong, that you're pushing the negative energy out, you can actually self-heal through that process. But the other thing I was going to say is about, I was going to speak to two other things that you mentioned: ADHD, depression, diagnosis of things, and also to speak your very early thing that you said was about a mission, right? So I'm just going to briefly say that in terms of ADHD and in terms of depression, in terms of all these diagnoses, I feel that even myself, right? I've been working on myself for so long. Since I got the divorce, I sort of had my awakening in 2014, 2015, which is when I decided that I really need to, leave my marriage. And then as I started the process of leaving the marriage, I began to have this, what can only be described as having these downloads, having these realizations, having this understanding of, okay, it's not about you, it's about somebody else's energy, or somebody else is trying to destroy you. You have to see it as that's their actual issue. But so the thing that I want to say about it is that then I started meditating, and then I started doing all this work, and then I started introducing Qigong into some of my exercise routines, and then I started doing like Bikram yoga and all these very interesting modalities with my body, which ultimately helped transcendence, which ultimately helped me to separate, understand at once the separateness between my brain and my body, and also teach my brain how to better help the body function, right? So like it goes both ways. But the thing I was going to say is that somebody who is beginning their awakening, let's say somebody who's not yet, on that level of not like on my incredible level, I'm not trying to say that, but if you're not working,
there's different levels.
If you're not
level 0 to like, there's 10.
Like if you're not 20, if you're not working on your brain, and you're not working on your body, and you're not eating healthy, and you're not taking supplements, and you're being bombarded by the environment, and you're being bombarded by other people's thoughts, and you don't have those boundaries, sometimes the only thing you can do to survive, right, is the antidepressant or the ADHD. So it's almost like the first thing probably for that person to do is go on a hybrid mission, like start to work on meditation and themselves, keep up with the Western medicine so that you can continue to function, and then eventually like wean yourself off if you can, if you're able to. But it is so hard. Like I listen to the monks and everything that they do. Like I'm so far away from that. I'm always brilliant.
Well, I was gonna say, I don't know. I was thinking about monks. Yeah, I'm like, I don't know if any of us here human that have kids that are like all these, that work with society. Like monks don't work with society, so they don't have to deal with society things. So it's like if I was on a hill, in Bali that could meditate all day long, sure, I could be a monk. I could so do that, right? But it's like I actually have a mission here to help humanity, versus,
and that's the thing. Exactly. And I was going to say that, like, to bring it all to a full circle, that I completely identify with you when you said, I'm here on a mission. I've always felt that. And always felt that all of these lessons and even this approach to pain, and let's not sit too long in processing it, but use that pain to become stronger and more powerful, has been because I'm here to help other people discover transcendence. And it's almost like our pain and our suffering is like this journey where we are studying the suffering so that we can then utilize it to help others, right? So it's like your own suffering becomes a map and like an e-course. Like my own suffering is like an e-course on how to deal with suffering, right?
Yeah. No. Yes. Yeah.
Right. So that, and I completely identify with what you said, because that mission is what keeps you, that asking, that why that you keep asking, but why, but what's more, but what's behind it. And then once you figure that out, you start to be able to understand how to actually push that mission forward.
Yeah. No, I love that. I just love I could go on for hours speaking about this. Yes. So, for the listeners, how can they get in contact with you? Is there, do you do free calls? Is there like a consultation? Like how, if they're interested in learning more with you, how can they get in contact with you? And I'll make sure your links are also, in the description box. But, if you could just tell them, is there an offer that you're offering right now, or?
I'm definitely happy if somebody wants to work with me. They can reach out to me via email or their phone. They can, and then they can email me and say, we would be interested. And I will try to reply to everybody who reaches out. And then I'm so open to a free consultation call, and I'm happy to share and see if somebody would be aligned and would be interested in kind of becoming more confident and becoming, confidence to freedom, to free yourself of a lot of these things that we're talking about, so that you can essentially transcend, succeed, and accomplish their mission. Because I believe every single person has a mission of their own. And if we could all kind of be aligned, like each one of us, and we are going to help the planet essentially transcend. I mean, it's a global, I see it like as a global mission, even between the two of us talking,
Oh yeah.
And so, yes, and they can reach out, and I will, I will set something up and set up a 30-minute free consultation call.
Okay. Also, yeah, I'll make sure also that is in the description box, along with your social media links, so everybody can contact you.
Take a look at my trailers, people.
Yes, I'll make sure that you'll have to send me those links. We'll put them in there.
I will. I can't wait to hear, your thoughts on some of these.
I know. I'm excited. Especially being the holiday this week, and I took some time off to relax this coming weekend. And I'm like, I'm gonna definitely, that will be something that we watch. I'll make my boyfriend watch it with me.
Well, I don't have the full movie yet, but I have a bunch of clips, and then
trailers are fine. We can definitely get
a bunch of trailers. I would love to hear back. Where are you located, by the way?
I'm in Newark, Delaware, so the States.
Oh, okay. So one of the people I was speaking to was to have the film screen in Washington. But you know what? If we are also, I'm also talking to people about streaming it. So obviously, as soon as we're up and about, I can't wait to hear your response to it. Like that.
Yeah, like maybe, like I was to say, maybe somebody listening to this has like contacts to like Netflix or get your movie.
We can have, you know what? I just came up with a kind of cool idea. Or we can have a private watch party.
Yeah. That's
I've been screening, we could do like a virtual watch party, and we're all in it, and then we can do like a Q&A with me and some of the cast. We can do it virtual.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Yeah,
that would be kind of awesome. We could put that together.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining us. I know I had an amazing time on this conversation. I hope you guys also listening stayed to the end to listen to all of her amazing nuggets. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe. You can leave also a review and share with somebody that you feel like that will gain value from listening to this. There was so much value in this conversation, I believe. So stay tuned for more captivating conversations in the future. And I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. And I will see you next week. Thank you for joining us on another enlightening episode on the Enlightened Misfits podcast. If you resonate with this conversation and found it insightful, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave us a review. Your feedback fuels our mission. Remember, your journey to unwavering certainty and purpose is ongoing. Stay connected with us on social media and let's continue this conversation. Let's manifest greatness in our lives. Until next time, this is Lauren from the Enlightened Misfits podcast. Stay enlightened, stay inspired, and keep manifesting your extraordinary path.